General Hospital spoilers teasing that Elizabeth Weber has finally confronted the truth of her heart, only to have fate twist its blade in the most horrifying way imaginable. It begins with a moment Elizabeth thought she would never admit aloud, in the hushed aftermath of a turbulent reunion at General Hospital, surrounded by 4 drips and concerned onlookers. She gazed into Lucky Spencer's storm-gray eyes and let her walls crumble. "I love you, Lucky," she whispered, voice trembling like a leaf in wind. The words hung between them, fragile yet incendiary, and for a heartbeat, the world stilled. All at once, Elizabeth allowed herself to envision a life restored, a life where the childhood friends turned star-crossed lovers could find their way back to each other, knitting together the frayed edges of shared history and loss. But in Port Charles, no confession comes without consequence. Almost as soon as the admission left her lips, Elizabeth recoiled, horror flooding her features. Memories of past betrayals, of nights spent watching Lucky with others, of pain she thought she'd buried, surged to the forefront. She whispered a frantic apology, words tumbling out in a tidal wave of regret. I don't know what I'm saying." In that moment of confusion, a moment so fleeting it seemed to stretch forever, Elizabeth's heart wrenched between longing and fear. Before Lucky could steady her, tragedy struck. In the tight quarters of that hospital corridor, their heated exchange escalated into bitter argument. Elizabeth, panic driving her movements, shoved Lucky back, harder than she intended, her palm connecting with his chest. He stumbled, one foot catching on the edge of a discarded wheelchair, and pitched backward. Time seemed to slow as Lucky's head arced toward the cold terrazzo floor, striking the unforgiving edge of a stone column. The sickening crack of bone against marble was a sound Elizabeth would never forget. His hand, once warm in hers, went limp. A thin ribbon of blood bloomed on his temple, and his gray eyes glazed over with the shock of sudden mortality. Elizabeth dropped to her knees, cradling his head, sobbing prayers as she pressed her blouse to the wound. "Please, Lucky," she pleaded into the stale hospital air. "Don't leave me." But even as she tore at the hem of her dress to staunch the bleeding, the light in his eyes flickered out. Word of Lucky's death rippled through Port Charles like a shockwave. Nurses halted mid-step, doctors exchanged grim looks, and patients whispered behind curtains. Elizabeth, collapsed over Lucky's body, felt her own world collapse. In her desperation, she fumbled for a phone to call Dante. Instead, she found her trembling fingers dialing her own voicemail. She left a brief, frantic message, voice choked with tears. "It's Liz. Lucky's hurt. He's not moving. Please come." Then the line cut out, leaving her alone with the lifeless weight of the man who had meant everything to her. The tragedy of Lucky's death, however, is only the first twist in a tapestry of deceit and desperation. For beneath the surface of this calamity lies a far more insidious web, one that begins with the stalled brakes on Rick Lansing's car and the young woman who orchestrated the sabotage. Christina Corinthos Davis, reeling from jealousy and rage toward her mother's ex-husband, saw an opportunity in Rick's late-night drive to the hospital. With quiet precision, she loosened the brake lines on his black SUV, convinced that a minor accident might teach Rick a lesson without lasting harm. But her miscalculation proved catastrophic. When Rick's brakes failed on the steep hill above Port Charles, the vehicle careened off the roadway, slamming into Elizabeth's car just as she was pulling away from an earlier shift at the hospital. Brutally injured in the crash, Rick was rushed to surgery, and Elizabeth, already shaken from the initial impact, lay unconscious in the adjacent operating theater. Only a few people knew the truth of Christina's deed, and one of them was Lucky. He had discovered evidence of tampering, a jagged piece of brake housing lodged beneath the tire, a faint smear of greasy fingerprints on the wheel well. Yet instead of exposing his cousin's crime, Lucky chose silence. His protective instincts toward Christina, born of familial love and the memory of all she had endured, won out over any sense of justice. He tucked the evidence away in his desk drawer at the Spencer home, vowing to shield Christina from consequences she didn't fully understand. That same afternoon, in a shadowed corner of the Savoy, Alexis Davis received the first of many blackmail demands. Ava Jerome and a remorseful Rick Lansing had conspired to record incriminating footage of Christina at the scene of the sabotage, Christina's own hand caught on camera, loosening the brake line before slipping away in the dark. Armed with the video, Ava and Rick confronted Alexis, warning that if she didn't deliver a substantial transfer of Cassadine family funds to a shell corporation controlled by Ava, they would release the tape to law enforcement and the media. Alexis, her maternal instinct flaring in defense of her daughter, agreed without hesitation. As the longtime overseer of the Cassadine estate's finances, she had both the authority and the means to redirect money Valentine Cassadine had entrusted to her for safekeeping and investment. To protect Christina, Alexis arranged for a secret wire transfer of over $2 million to Ava's account. Yet in doing so, she violated the ironclad agreement she had made with Valentine, that no Cassadine funds would be touched without his explicit approval. As the days passed, Alexis's conscience warred with her fear. She knew what she did was treasonous in Cassadine terms. She had breached a pact sealed with blood and upheld for generations. Panic gnawed at her as Ava's demands escalated. Additional funds, assurances of silence, proof that no law enforcement involvement would follow. Desperate to erase all traces of the original crime, Alexis turned to Damian Spinelli, the city's most resourceful hacker and investigator. With tears in her eyes, she begged him to find Rick's wrecked SUV and destroy it. The mangled hulk, she reasoned, was the final piece of evidence that could tie Christina, herself, and even Lucky to a criminal act. Spinelli, ever the loyal friend to Alexis, agreed. He slipped through back alleys and delved into city impound records, tracing the license plate to the tow yard where Rick's vehicle remained stored under police hold. Using his digital prowess, Spinelli forged a series of impound release forms, then orchestrated a nighttime pickup. He arranged for a flatbed tow truck to remove the SUV, deliver it to a remote junkyard, and crush it at first light. In his mind, the operation was foolproof: no car, no video proof, no blackmail. But Ava and Rick, anticipating such a move, had already secretly moved the SUV to a hidden storage facility outside town. When Spinelli's courier arrived, they surrendered a decoy shell of a vehicle, an old SUV stripped of identifying markers and crushed beyond recognition in a private shredder. Spinelli watched the mangled mass vanish into a crusher's jaws, believing he had succeeded. Hours later, as Elizabeth sat vigil by Lucky's side, a different clandestine operation unfolded on the river docks. Spinelli, riding the adrenaline high of a job well done, checked his messages to find an urgent call from Alexis. Expecting praise, he instead heard desperation. "They've got the real car," Alexis whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm going under, Damian. If they catch me." She trailed off, tears making her words break. Spinelli's heart sank. He knew that if the real SUV resurfaced with the surveillance footage intact, Alexis's life and Christina's future would be ruined. He vowed to hunt down the genuine article and finish the obliteration himself. Under cover of dawn, Spinelli returned to the docks. He and a small crew lifted the SUV from the shadows of the lot, loaded it onto a flatbed, and drove toward an abandoned quarry, a limestone pit far from prying eyes. As dawn's pale light illuminated the jagged cliffs, they prepared to feed the SUV over the edge, sending it crashing hundreds of feet into the water below. But fate interceded in the form of Lucky Spencer himself. Unseen, Lucky stalked the lot after noticing Spinelli's suspicious movements on late-night security footage at his own home. Fueled by guilt over Christina's sabotage and fear that Alexis's bribery would be uncovered, he decided to intercept the destruction. As he slipped between containers toward the quarry road, he saw the truck, the SUV, and Spinelli's unmistakable silhouette. "Damien," he called softly, stepping into the circle of workers. Startled, Spinelli turned, guilt and relief flickering across his face. "Lucky, I thought you weren't working tonight." "I know," Lucky replied, voice low but urgent. "But I can't let you destroy that car. If it's sunk in a quarry halfway across the state, there's no proving what happened, no possibility of finding the truth. Alexis, Christina, my family, they need a chance to clear their names with the right evidence. You have to leave it alone." Spinelli's brow furrowed. "Lucky, you don't understand." "I understand more than you think." Lucky stepped forward. "There are layers of betrayal here. Christina's sabotage, Alexis's blackmail payments, my own silence that protected them both. But destroying this vehicle won't fix any of it. It'll just bury the truth and make everything worse when it eventually surfaces." Spinelli hesitated, torn between loyalty to Alexis and deference to Lucky's moral plea. Ultimately, he backed down. "All right," he sighed. "We'll scrap the plan." Unknown to both men, another shadow moved among the limestone cliffs that morning. Elizabeth Weber, still reeling from the shock of Lucky's accident and subsequent death, had grown suspicious of Lucky's late-night absences. She remembered catching a glimpse of his silhouette leaving their shared apartment, bound for parts unknown. In her grief-stricken haze, she followed him, her heart aching with unspoken confessions and rising dread. Reaching the quarry's edge, she froze as she saw Lucky and Spinelli arguing by the flatbed truck. Through tears, she recognized Lucky's familiar posture, protective, angry, determined. She saw Spinelli's open coat and the telltale curve of his laptop bag, evidence of some secret operation. Heart pounding, Elizabeth crept closer, straining to catch their words. Then, in the next instant, she witnessed the moment she would haunt her own soul for the rest of her days. As Lucky turned to walk away, Elizabeth stepped on a loose stone. It skittered beneath her foot, and she stumbled forward, arms flailing. In her panic, her hand shot out and collided with Spinelli's laptop bag, sending it careening into the moving flatbed behind Lucky. Spinelli dashed to catch it, but in that same heartbeat, Elizabeth grasped for Lucky's arm, crying out, "What's going on?" Lucky spun, face pale under the quarry sun. "Liz, get back," he shouted. But she advanced, eyes wide. "Lucky, tell me, what are you hiding?" He took a step back, lost his footing on the gravel, and pitched backward toward the rocky ledge. Elizabeth lunged to catch him, but her outstretched hand missed his elbow. His head struck the jagged limestone. The impact reverberated in Elizabeth's ears as blood spattered against her white lab coat. Lucky collapsed, body sliding down the slope until he lay still in a shallow pool of dust and stones. Elizabeth screamed, scrambling down the incline, digging frantic fingers into Lucky's neck for a pulse. "No, no, no," she whispered, voice breaking. She tore at her own hair, then pressed her sleeve against the wound, blood seeping through in dark rivulets. She dialed 911 with numb fingers, her mind a maelstrom of horror and regret. He's not breathing," she stammered to the dispatcher. "Please hurry." By the time paramedics arrived, the sun was already high above the quarry. They worked over Lucky with mechanical precision, 4 lines, adrenaline shots, chest compressions. But it was too late. The crushing blow to his temple, compounded by minutes without circulation, proved fatal. As Elizabeth looked on, tears carving trenches down her cheeks, she realized the full extent of the tragedy. In her grief and confusion, she had killed the man she loved, the man she had just professed to, the man who had kept so many secrets to protect their family. In trying to unearth the truth about Christina, about Alexis, about her own heart, she had unearthed nothing but her own worst nightmare. In the days that follow, Port Charles will be torn apart by the fallout. Christina's sabotage, Alexis's betrayal of Valentine Cassadine, Spinelli's daring destruction plans, and Lucky's ultimate sacrifice will collide in a courtroom drama more sensational than any headline. Elizabeth will face charges, manslaughter at best, murder at worst, and the coroner's report will tell a story of unintended violence and heartbreak. Meanwhile, Alexis must answer to Valentine and the Cassadine legacy, her misappropriation of funds and cover-up of her daughter's crime threatening to plunge the family into public scandal. Damien Spinelli, racked with guilt for his part in transporting the vehicle and ultimately failing to protect his friends, will become a reluctant key witness. Christina, devastated by the chain of events she set in motion, will vanish from the public eye, her conscience shattered by the knowledge that her single act of vengeance led to the death of two people she loved. And in the hearts of all who knew him, Elizabeth, Dante, Lulu, Anna, Mac, Sunny, Carly, and beyond, Lucky Spencer's memory will endure as both a symbol of love's redemptive power and a cautionary tale of secrets kept too long. Port Charles will never be the same, and as whispers of what if echo through hospital corridors and police precincts alike, one question will haunt them all. Could any tragedy have been averted had truth prevailed from the start? In a town where every heart keeps its own secrets, the blood spilled in the name of protection may prove the most powerful lie of all.